morning, Icon. It's so great to have all of you joining us today. And I say good morning to most of you, but we actually have someone joining us from Singapore today. So I guess it would be good evening to you, but we're just super glad to have all of you here with us today. My name is Kelly Matlock, and I'm the pastor here at Icon, and I'm just thrilled to get to join you for online church this morning. And listen, if you are new to Icon, maybe you've just been coming around for a little while, or maybe you've been coming around for a long time, but you haven't done this yet, we would love for you to fill out a Connect card. And the reason for this is just we want to be able to, number one, stay connected with you, and then also keep you up to date and filled in on everything that we have going on around here as we start new small groups, or as there are special events that come up, or different online experiences that we have. We just want you to be able to stay in the loop. So we'd appreciate it if you could just take a second, click on the Connect button, and fill your information out on there. And another really great way for you to be able to stay connected is by downloading the Icon app. Then you can get notifications, and it's just really helpful for reminders and just to keep you filled in on everything that we have going on around here. And then this morning, if, I know that it's being online is hard because we're not together and we can't, there are just certain things that just feel harder or feel different. But we want you to know that if you need prayer, we still want to be able to join with you in prayer. So if there is something weighing heavily on you this morning, or if you would just like to be able to have someone agree with you in prayer about something, go ahead and click on the prayer button, and then we will have one of our hosts that will meet you in a private chat room so that they can hear what's on your heart and be able to spend some time praying with you. And then the last thing to go over before we go into worship and then the message for today is just, first of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you for your generosity, for continuing to give to Icon. We could not do this without you and without your generosity. So we are just really, really grateful. So thank you so much for continuing to give and just for being generous. And listen, I do want to say this to you. So I've just been thinking, and as a staff, we've talked, a few times about this, but I realized that, this year more than ever, a lot of us financially are struggling, and it's just been really difficult for a lot of people. And I just want to say that if you find yourself in a place today where maybe you have some needs that are looming over you and that are stressing you out or that are weighing heavily on you, please let us know. I can't promise that we can, meet every single need, but we want to make sure that our community is taken care of. So if there is something financially that is weighing heavily on you that you are in need, please, you can feel free to email us, info@iconchurch.com, and just, let us know if there's something that we can do to come together with you and to help take care of those needs for you. Okay, so here we are going to move into a time of worship with Arlene, and then after that we will come back here to go into our second week of our Advent series. We're going to be talking about peace today. So in whatever way feels comfortable for you, use this time just to connect with the divine in whatever way is best for you, and then we'll see you back here in a few minutes.
You give life, you are love. worship you, Jesus. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will Thank you, Jesus.
Welcome back, everyone. Arlene, thank you so much for leading us in that beautiful time of worship. I know that we all need that every week, and so we're just grateful for your leadership and just for you leading us in worship every single week. So today we are in our second week of our Advent series, and Advent is something that we celebrate and kind of honor leading up to Christmas. And Advent just simply means arrival or coming, and it's where we practice this idea of waiting on the coming of Christ. That in the same way that Christ came to us physically as a human baby thousands of years ago, I believe that Christ continues to come to us time and time again today. And Advent is this time where we practice that waiting and where we are still and we allow ourselves to really sort of embrace the season and really enter into this time of waiting. And last week we talked about hope, and we've spent this past week meditating on that and thinking about hope and the ways in which we are hopeful and the ways in which that we can help to bring hope to others. And today we're going to explore this next theme of Advent, which is peace. And, peace is a really common word that's used around Christmas time. I mean, we see it on ornaments and on Christmas decor, and it's in the Christmas carols that we sing. And, I think this idea of peace is oftentimes a word that when it comes to what Scripture is talking about when it talks about peace, oftentimes we can misunderstand it. We think that peace, is this like cozy feeling of tranquility, or that it's about things being quiet as opposed to things being noisy and busy. And but really, when you dive into the Scriptures, and we've talked about this before as a church, but really this idea of peace in the Scriptures, in the Hebrew Scriptures, in the Old Testament, it's shalom. And then in the Greek, in the New Testament, it's eirene. And it just means wholeness or being complete. It is everything which makes for our highest good. That was one thing that I read in one of the commentaries I was reading, and I thought that was so beautiful. And so the peace that we're going to reflect on today and throughout this week as we move forward with Advent, it's the idea of us practicing waiting for the wholeness that Christ brings to us and to this world. It's a peace that is both individual and that is collective. And I don't know about you and where you're at today and what things are weighing heavily on you, but I know that I am definitely actively waiting for some parts of myself to be made whole. We live in a world in which there are broken systems that harm us and harm our neighbors. There are hurt people in the world that then in turn hurt other people. We've probably been on both ends of that, where we've been the ones that have been hurt, but we've also been the ones that have done the hurting. There is brokenness and bondage and suffering, and because of this, we all have parts of ourselves that need to be made whole. And oftentimes we find ourselves living kind of fragmented, and there are broken places that need to be mended. We desperately need the shalom that Christ has to offer. And when Jesus was born, there were, pronouncements of peace on earth, and prophecy spoke of Jesus being this Prince of Peace. And I can imagine in a day where there were Jewish people who were being oppressed. They were living under the boot of empire. Communities and families had been torn apart by war. Power was maintained at all costs. I am sure to them that the promise of peace, of shalom, of this Prince of Peace coming had to have been like a breath of fresh air to them when they probably felt like they were suffocating a lot of the time. And they needed that liberation and that rescue. They needed peace. They needed to be made whole within themselves, within their communities, within their relationships. And not a whole lot has changed between then and now for where we are at. And we still need that same peace that they needed then. We need it today. We need peace in our marriages. We need peace in our friendships, in our families, in our communities, and within ourselves. We all need for the broken areas of our lives to be made whole. And in the Gospel of John, there's an account of this conversation that Jesus has with his disciples. And it's shortly before Jesus was to be arrested, and he and the disciples are having their Last Supper together. And Jesus had just finished washing the disciples' feet, and he knows that the time of his death is drawing near. And so in these next few chapters, starting in chapter 14 of John and the next chapters following, we find Jesus giving what I imagine to be his best efforts to impart all of the important stuff to his closest friends. It's like he knows he's going to be leaving them, and so this is his time to really tell them all of the things that matter. And he tells them that, he's going to be leaving, but that the Holy Spirit is going to come and be present with them. And in John 14:27, Jesus tells them this. He says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I don't give it to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not let them be afraid." And this phrase, "peace I leave with you," is actually a really common phrase that people would say to one another when they parted company. So it's very similar to when we say goodbye to each other when we're leaving. That was the "peace I leave with you" was what the Jewish people would say. And it's interesting because actually our word goodbye originated from a word that means God with you. But when you think about it, when we say goodbye to one another, that's not really what we're thinking. We're just meaning I'll see you later. It's kind of just this very simple, superficial, I'll see you later kind of a thing. And the Jewish people, as they would say this, "peace I leave with you," it had really become very casual, and it was just said in passing. It didn't have like the full meaning behind the words every time they would say it. So here Jesus is saying, "Peace I leave with you," but then he also goes on to say, "My peace I give to you." And so to me, I hear Jesus here, he's saying, I'm leaving my peace with you. I am inviting you into this place where things are made right. I'm offering you wholeness. I'm offering you everything that makes for your highest good. I want you to have peace, the kind of peace that binds you together with one another, and in which you can be made whole within yourselves and with one another and within the world. And then he says this, he says, "I do not give to you as the world gives." So he's saying, I'm not saying this lightly. I'm not saying this just in passing. This isn't just a phrase I'm using, but rather this is something real that I want to leave with you. And think about it. When you think about the peace that the world offers, how does that compare to the peace that Christ offers us? And when I say the world, I'm referring to those thoughts and ideas and mindsets that we as humans tend to come up with on our own that don't necessarily align with the things of God and with the way of love. There was one commentary that put it like this. It said, "Often the peace that the world offers is the peace of escape, the peace which comes from the avoidance of trouble and from refusing to face things." And I thought, ooh, that's absolutely true. That's often the kind of peace that the world offers us. And often the kind of peace that we want is the kind that doesn't require very much from us. Jesus absolutely offers us peace, but in order to truly accept that and to live into it, I have found that we will have work to do on our end. I don't think I have ever experienced shalom, like that wholeness, without having to make the choice to actively pursue it. I don't think it's never just kind of dropped into my lap. It's always been something that I've had to actively pursue. But oftentimes the work that is required of us is hard. And sometimes we don't want to do it because that work can be painful and it's uncomfortable and it asks us to admit to our own brokenness, and that's really hard and painful. We want to be at peace in our relationships, but often we don't want to do the hard work of owning the harm we have caused in order for there to be wholeness. We want there to be peace in our communities and in our world, but often we don't want to do the hard work of justice and of working for equity so that there can be peace. We want to experience this internal peace, this shalom within ourselves, but we don't always want to do the hard work of really examining those broken places and allowing ourselves to feel the pain so that we can be made whole. And this has been very personal for me lately. I have always been a stuffer. when it comes to feeling difficult emotions. And I want to make a distinction because often we tend to think of certain emotions as good and certain emotions as bad, but I'm learning from some really great teachers in my life that there aren't bad emotions. There's just emotions that are harder to feel, that are more difficult to feel. Feelings are just information to help us learn and grow. And there are definitely some emotions and feelings that are harder for us to allow ourselves to feel because of what's attached to those emotions. Because once we start to feel that, we have to recognize and admit to what's behind it, and that can be really painful. And for me, the two main emotions, the two hard emotions lately that I've been feeling are fear and disappointment. And because feelings are information and they're telling us about something deeper going on, if I allow myself to sit in that disappointment or in that fear, I know that it will be painful and that it's going to require me to do some hard inner work that doesn't feel good. And it will bring up some inner conflict. And I don't like conflict and I want to avoid it at all costs. So for the past few weeks, I have been reverting back to my good old coping skills of numbing out and stuffing those feelings down and pretending like they're not there and not paying attention to them. And quite honestly, I have been doing it and not even really realizing that I was doing it. I'm actually really good at stuffing to be able to do it and not even realize that I'm doing it. And then I had a counseling appointment a few days ago. And I was talking to my counselor and she started asking me lots of questions about what I'm feeling. And I was like, ugh, the nerve, like to ask me what I'm feeling in counseling. And it didn't take me long through our conversation for me to recognize what I'd been doing. And so she said, well, what are you doing with those feelings? And I was like, quite honestly, I'm stuffing them and not feeling them. And then she's like, well, how is that working out for you? And we started talking about the effects that was having on me, that I had been carrying it in my body and that my body was actually suffering in the form of headaches and neck pain because that's where I carry all of my stress. And we talked about how it's been affecting my relationships because when I numb out, I pull back from friendships. Because often when we numb the difficult stuff that we think is bad or hard, we end up numbing the good stuff too. And so, we talked about all of those things, about how it's affecting my life and how it's not helping me to lean into the kind of life that I want. And so since then, and moving forward, my work is to meditate and to be still and to allow whatever is going to come up so that I can work through it, so I can stop avoiding it and I can work through it. Because unless I let it all come out, I am never going to find that peace, that wholeness that Christ is offering to me. I have to do the hard work in order to receive that. And I'm learning that in order to experience true peace, I have to be willing to fully embrace myself as I am in that moment. Not as who I think I should be, but for who I am in that moment. See, Christ came into this world with pronouncements of peace, and Christ continues to come to us today with this invitation into the peace that he brings us, not the peace that the world offers. And so before I move on, I do want to take a second just to stop, and I really would love to hear from all of you today. So I'm going to ask a question and then you can feel free to respond in the comments. And I'm going to move on and read a couple things and then I'll come back and we can kind of talk about, the comments that you're leaving. I love being able to engage with you in this way. It's something really cool about online church that we can't do when we're like in a gathering typically. But I would love to hear from you today. In what ways do you need to experience peace this week? In what ways do you need to experience peace this week? So you can feel free to drop your answers in the comments and I'll come back to that here in a minute. But before I do that, I want to read, last week I talked about the Reclaiming My Theology Advent book that I'm going through, and I want to read the reading for today is about this idea of when we disconnect from ourselves and we aren't feeling that internal peace. It says the consumerism, romanticism, and hallmarkiness of our Christmas season is a cocktail that leaves us drunk on disembodiment. We, in light of the season, often force ourselves to live outside of our present realities in favor of performing a merry or a joyful Christmas. This does violence to our souls. It prevents us from moving through pain in favor of moving around it. And when we disconnect from ourselves, whether by platitudes or coping mechanisms, we reinforce the need to perform a, quote, spirit of Christmas. But the Advent is an invitation to be real and human. It is an invitation to feel the full range of complex and conflicting feelings that may come, and in moving through them, discover a peace that goes deeper than anything that we can manufacture. And I just thought that that was so incredibly beautiful. You know, it's difficult to be at peace within ourselves when we don't accept things as they are. When we numb out and try to pretend like everything is fine, it's only in acknowledging what is that we can truly find peace within ourselves. And this is what comes to mind when I read Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Do not worry about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. It's this idea of when we bring it all, when we are honest, when we honestly bring it all before God, it is then that we are able to experience the peace of God that passes all understanding. I'm going to go ahead and move over to the comments here really quick. Olga says that she needs peace with family and friends, coworkers, and other relationships. She said, having peace with people around me gives me peace with myself. Yes, because we're all connected and we all belong to each other. Yes. Dave says it's hard because if you do it so often, you forget about it. You freeze something out for so long, it gets harder to thaw over time, no matter how much heat you apply. And it's also extremely time-consuming and oftentimes painful, but it's a necessary process because once the ice is gone, you can see things more clearly. Yeah, that's really beautiful, Dave. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and then Dan shared a really great quote by Brene Brown. It says, we cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions. It's very, very true. So yeah, it's just one of those things that, again, I think oftentimes, at least I do this and have done this before, that as we live this life of faith, it's really easy to sort of look at God as this like cosmic wizard who's just going to zap us with, a magic wand, and we're suddenly going to feel peace and we're suddenly going to be hopeful. And the thing is that these are things we have to choose and we have to partner. It's like everything about faith in God, to me, this is how I see it. Everything about faith in God is this invitation into this partnership where I know that God is faithful and I know that God has these things to offer, but I also have to take steps forward and I also have to, accept that invitation and move forward into it. Dan says, I need to find and offer peace to myself. It's easier to offer grace and peace for others. Yeah, that is really, really, really true. Oh, well, thank you guys so much for your comments. When we experience supernatural peace and this wholeness and completeness, when we bring honestly what's in our hearts before God, we are on the road to that shalom, to that wholeness that God offers. During Advent, we practice waiting for peace within ourselves, peace with one another and with the world. And we practice this peace within ourselves by coming as we are, not as who we think we ought to be. We practice peace with others by seeing one another for who they are, not as we expect them to be. And we practice peace within the world by seeking justice and the wholeness and flourishing of all. So as we wrap up today, I'm going to read one more though. Jenny says, need the wholeness or healing of being accepted, knowing we are loved, even when the broken or angry or disappointed emotions are strong. Yes, we are held by love, always, 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 always. So as we wrap up today and we kind of move forward into this second week of Advent, may we reflect on this peace this week, meditate on this kind of shalom, this opportunity to live into the wholeness of Christ within ourselves, with one another, and with the world. And may we wait expectantly for this peace as we do the work and, lean into the work that we each have to do to make this peace possible in our lives and in our world, trusting that Christ will be faithful to arrive. Christ will be faithful to come and bring us this peace, that we can wait expectantly and know that it will come. And so today what I'd like to do is I would just like to pray for all of you, and then we will wrap it up. So let's pray. God of peace, we come to you today, and we choose to come to you with expectant hearts, that we choose to practice waiting for you to bring the things, even the things that may feel far off, that we are going to practice waiting for that. I pray that you would give each of us the strength and the patience to be able to enter into the work that we each need to do in order to experience your shalom in our lives, in our relationships, with this world. So God, collectively together, we wait on you. We ask for your peace, for your wholeness to come into our lives, into our relationships, because we know that it is only you who can truly make us whole. And so we wait for you. In your name I pray. Amen. Well, I love y'all so much. I'm just so thrilled to be able to gather with you and to experience this whole Advent process of waiting on Christ together with you. I pray that all of you would have a great week this week, and we will see you right back here next week. I'm excited because the next 2 weeks we have Sabrina Jennings and Amanda Martinez who are going to be bringing us the messages. So I'm looking forward to hearing from them. And yeah, that's it. And I'm like sitting here shocked because Dan has not done any sound effects. And I'm actually, well, he's, I don't even know if they can hear that. Can you guys actually hear what he's playing right now? I don't know. But see, I have the mouse, so he can't control it. So anyways.
But I'm also near the microphone, so this disembodied voice can also say
what
things and stuff. Merry Christmas,
everyone. Sabrina
Love you
and
guys.
Locke said, Dan, are you going to start singing?
I'm going to have to. She's
Dave
stealing
said
my
he's
mouse.
a wizard.
I am.
It's like the wizard behind the curtain, you know. Karaoke. Ooh, that could be super fun to do karaoke one week.
It's a hard pass over here with me.
Yeah. All right. Enough shenanigans. We love you all, and we will see you guys right back here next week.